Before we jump into the episode today, I want to share something with you from my heart. First of all, thank you so much for listening to the podcast. I really can't tell you how much your support means to me. We've been doing the podcast now for almost 4 years. I can't even believe it. And I'm so grateful for each and every single one of you that listens, shares an episode with your friends, sends me a DM or a text message letting me know how an episode resonated with you or any aha moments. Seriously, I couldn't be more grateful to be able to create this podcast. It has been such a blessing in my life, and I love hearing the ways it's been able to provide value in yours as well. One thing you might not know is how much work it takes to be consistent with a podcast. In fact, did you know that the majority of podcasts don't make it past episode number 10? And we are well beyond that. And it's just a lot thinking of the episodes, recording them, editing them, managing the guests, making sure that everything runs smoothly and gets uploaded consistently and regularly. And so that's why I have created an amazing opportunity for you to support the podcast monetarily. And in exchange for that, you will get exclusive premium subscriber content. So for as little as $3 a month, you can become a premium subscriber of the podcast. And every month I will upload new voice-guided workouts and breathwork meditation audio for you. So that way you can work out with me, coaching you in your ears. You can also take a moment to reduce your stress and relax and come down and ground down with one of my breathwork audios. So if that is on your heart to support the podcast for as little as $3 a month to become a premium podcast subscriber, I can't tell you how much that means to me and the growth of this podcast. I appreciate you. If you're interested, click the link in the description, become a premium podcast subscriber, new content every month, and while supplies last, I'll send you an exclusive podcast coffee mug so you can have your self-love and sweat coffee every morning. I appreciate you. Now let's get into the show. Welcome to Self-Love and Sweat, the podcast, the place where you'll get inspired to live your life unapologetically, embrace your perfect imperfections, break down barriers, and do what sets your soul on fire. I'm your host, Lunden Souza. Hey friend, it's me, Lunden Souza, online lifestyle transformation coach. I help people all over the world just like you who know they are meant for more, get their mind right and their body tight, and go from crazy busy to crazy happy. And hey, if it's our first time meeting, welcome. So happy to have you. And if you've been with us for a while, it's so great that you're here too. I'm really excited to share this episode of the Self-Love and Sweat podcast with you. Starting something new. That's what we're talking about in this episode. And I'm super pumped to share these 8 points with you that I've put together for this episode. Right now, when I am recording this, it's April 11th, 2020. We are in the middle of COVID-19, and a lot of us, all around the world have been affected in various different ways. And we're kind of in the middle of quarantine and lockdown, really depending on where you are in this world. And even though this can be a time that is scary and uncertain and definitely unprecedented, I am really excited for the opportunity that a lot of us have to start something new. And I just continue to see the beauty in that. And I'm really excited to see the resourcefulness in a lot of us and how we're able to say, okay, I've always said I wanted to go after this, and now is the time. Now is my time to start something new and go after this goal and this dream that I've always had. And so whether it's, hey, like me, I wanted to start a podcast, whether you're starting a podcast, a blog, online business, or just anything that you know you want to be consistent with over the long term and that you really feel like, hey, it's go time, this episode is going to be for you. Okay, so this is not like, oh, you've already always wanted to, do this DIY project or clean out this drawer or something like that, starting something new there. This is really for those of you who are like, hey, I have always wanted to start this, or like I have no choice but to start this now. So that's what these 8 points that I've put together for you are going to really drive home here for you. Okay, so let's jump right in. So point number 1, when starting something new, what's my why? Why do I want to do this? That was the first episode when I started this podcast, episode number 1. Why did I start this podcast? What's my why in both my personal and professional life? I shared that all with you in episode number 1. But what is your why? Why do you want to start this new project? This is going to be very, very critical. These are your roots. These are your roots. You really need to root down in that why, because the tree can only grow as tall as its roots are deep. Okay, friends? So this is so important in any goal setting and starting anything new. What is your why? And maybe in the beginning, you're just like, okay, I want to start something new. I've always kind of thought about this. So maybe your why in the beginning is kind of like, okay, because I always said I wanted to, and I want to try it out, and I want to see if I like it. That's totally cool. Maybe you need to kind of Google around a little bit or YouTube around a little bit, get your fingers dirty a little bit as you are trying to figure out, okay, what does this kind of look like? Is this something that I want to dive into? So that's the first point, is what is my why? And getting really, really rooted in that why. Point number 2, is that why compelling enough? Is that why going to bring you back no matter what life throws at you, no matter what curveballs may come at you, no matter how you're feeling in that moment, no matter what struggles or troubles or things might come where you're just like, whoa, I didn't expect that. All right, yes, I still want to go after that. My why is just bigger than how I'm feeling in that moment. Your why really needs to be compelling enough to withstand all the storms, all the things. And I really encourage you to sit with that why. When you feel like, okay, that's the reason why, I really feel like that's it, I really encourage you to sit with that why. I like to bring my why to my meditation. And I did that for probably like 2 weeks before I really said, okay, yes, Lunden, that's my why. Like that's really, really like that's going to be the roots that go so deep that they're going to bring you back. It's going to bring you back all the time to that feeling of why you started. When you think about your why and you read that why, that's why I always say I like it to be short and sexy and something that you can memorize. When you say that why out loud or read that why or think about that why, it should bring all the feelings back of why you started. All those feelings should just come flooding back to you to be like, oh yeah, that's why I started. All right, let me come back to that. And I really brought that why to my meditation for a couple weeks. And I shared it with you in episode number 1 of why I started this podcast. And I said, my why is because I want to be able to work from anywhere in the world and be able to visit my family whenever I want while still making maximum impact and providing a ton of value. And I remember sitting in my meditation with that and just saying it over and over and repeating it and just getting goosebumps. And it just felt like I remember sitting in my meditation once and a particular time. And I just remember like imagining my why as the roots growing out of my sit bones. I was sitting on my yoga mat and I just kind of was like, ooh, these roots are going down deep, and some teardrops came out of my eyes. And that's just when I knew. I was like, yes, this why is compelling enough to get me through all the storms, to get me through all the ups and downs and side to sides and all the things that are going to come, because they will. And so making sure that not only do you identify your why,
but you ask yourself, is my why compelling enough? And sit with that and feel through that and ask yourself that. And if that answer is yes, this is it, then you're ready to move on to the next point. Number 3, when starting something new, am I willing to do what it takes to be consistent? Am I willing to do what it takes to be consistent every day, week, month, year? If you really want to be successful in what you're doing, you have to be consistent. There's no such thing as an overnight success at all. It's really, really months, years even of hard, relentless work, coming back to that why and knowing why you're doing that and being consistent. When it came time to starting this podcast, I really had to ask myself, okay, does this serve your why? Yes. Okay. Are you willing to do what it takes to be consistent? And what does that look like for you? Are you going to post every week, every 2 weeks? What is that going to look like? And can you show up and can you be consistent there? And I had to really, ask myself that and be really real and say, yes, I want to do this because it's really going to impact a lot of lives. I can do it from anywhere. And I am willing to do what it takes because I feel like there are so many people out there asking me questions on a regular basis that I can make podcast content about, that I'm willing to do what it takes. I'm willing to gather those questions, and I'm willing to sit down and create an episode and talk to you guys about it and get it all produced and get it uploaded and write out, all that kind of stuff. Am I willing to do what it takes to be consistent? And being honest with yourself. I was on a call with one of my VIP coaching clients, and she was talking about wanting to start a blog. And I kind of asked her, do you like to write? And she's like, well, yeah, I like to write. And I was always really good at English. And I'm like, no, do you really like to write? Because if you start a blog, you're going to need to be writing consistently, every week, every couple weeks on a regular basis, for as long as this blog lives, until you basically decide to stop. And hopefully you start something, that you don't want to stop, that is so compelling to you that you're just like, I want to go after that, forever and for always. And I just really, really am committed to that. So making sure that you're consistent is very, very important, and asking yourself and being honest, am I willing to do what it takes to be consistent, to come back to that why and to know why I'm being consistent, and put forth content and put it out there, on a regular basis, because it's really what's going to make it grow and what's going to make it successful is what you do over the long term. It's not just what you do today or right now. It's what you do every single day, or what you do every single week and what you're doing consistently. One of my favorite books ever is called The Slight Edge. It's a really great book, and it's just about the compounding effects of the little efforts over time and the compounding effects of consistency over time. So point number 3, am I willing to do what it takes to be consistent? Point number 4, what are all the steps I need to do to get good? What are all the steps I need to do to get to this goal, including what do I need to learn? And even on my notes here, I wrote a lot of L's on all. So it's like, what are all the steps I need to do to get to this goal, including what do I need to learn? And this is something that I love to do at the beginning of any project. And I did this for the podcast. I did it for when I transitioned my business fully online, is just taking a moment and setting a timer for 10 or 15 minutes, sometimes even longer, and opening up a note on my phone or putting pen to paper, opening up a Word document on my computer, and just listing all the things that I can think of that I would need to do or learn in order to reach this goal, or in order to kind of get this goal off of the ground. All the things that you can think of, every little minute detail. So when I started this podcast, I made a long list, and it was nail down the title, write the description, figure out what I'm going to talk about. Am I going to do interviews? What does this kind of look like? Who do I need to reach out to? new platforms do I need to learn? How do I upload my podcast on iTunes and Spotify and Stitcher and Google and all the things? Like, how do I even do that? I listened to a bunch of podcasts, but like, I didn't know how to do all of those things. What do I need to do? So I had to make a list, a super long list, and it doesn't need to be in order. It doesn't need to be like, this is step 1, this is step 2. It's really like, get out all the steps that you can think of right in this moment that you need to do to get to this goal, including what you need to learn. What skills do you need to learn in order to reach this goal? It's going to be very important. And make a super long list and just expect that you're going to add to that list too afterwards. Because once you start kind of digging into the ground or breaking the foundation, if you will, you're going to realize like, okay, yeah, there are some more things I need to add to that list. And at the same time, once you start breaking the ground and making progress on that goal, you'll also have moments where you're like, oh, that was a lot easier than I thought. And you'll also have moments where you're like, oh, that was a lot harder than I thought. So just be open to the fact that there's going to be a lot of steps and also a lot of things that you need to learn. So I like to, right from the beginning, after I decided, okay, this is my why, this is super compelling, I'm willing to do what it takes to be consistent, I make a long list of all the things that I would need to do to get to that goal and make it as super detailed as possible. Sometimes I'll even make a list and then I'm like, okay, that point can be broken down into like 5 or 10 more points. Let's get really detailed. So that way you have a really clear picture, at least from the beginning, what steps you're going to need to take to make that progress. Okay. That was number 4. So coming into number 5. Who else is doing what I am doing and what can I learn from them? So this is so powerful and so important. And the great thing is that with Google and YouTube, there's so many people all over the world who are sharing the mistakes that they've made, who are sharing the steps that have worked, who are sharing the tools that they've used that have helped them make big progress. Because quite frankly, I know that I'm already going to make a ton of mistakes and I'm already going to learn a lot of things that I don't want to make the same mistakes that somebody else already has. When I started this podcast, I downloaded this like PDF that was the top 10 things or something like that to do before you start a podcast. So instead of me figuring out like all the things I needed to do, I downloaded this PDF. It was like this really cool ebook and I just started from there. And I'm like, okay, thanks dude, whoever you were, for putting that together. That was really helpful. Now I have, a lot of steps and a lot of the, the text that I needed to create. I knew, what I needed to record ahead of time to make sure that that was consistent, like the intro that I have and the outro to the podcast, what the title was, the graphic, what that picture was going to look like, just all the things that I realized, okay, these are all the things that I need. Thank you, guy who already did a podcast and who already made the list of all the things I needed to make sure that I check off before launching a podcast. There are so many people out there who have done that, and it's so awesome. And that's why I'm always sharing too my learnings with you guys and the mistakes that I've made and some of the failures that I've learned from in my life, because that's what it's all about, right? Learning from each other, growing with each other. And so it's really important to know who else is doing what I'm doing, who else is in this industry, and what can I learn from them. When I started this podcast too, I'd been listening to podcasts consistently for, the last 5+ years. So I knew, okay, what kind of music I wanted, what I wanted that to kind of sound like. I knew which podcasts I liked. Did I like longer ones? Did I like shorter ones? Did I like ones that were more scripted? Did I like ones that were more natural? What kind of, style I like to listen to is kind of what I implemented into my podcast when thinking about, okay, how can I provide maximum value? And at the same time, I kind of thought, okay, what do you like listening to, Lunden? What sounds good for you? And what have you learned from this kind of research, if you will? I call it research. When I'm listening to podcasts, I'm listening to, what's the audio sound like? How are they, recording that? How long is the content? And do I like that? Are they taking breaks in between? Are they putting ads in there or not? There's so many different things that you can learn from other people out there who are doing what you want to do or who have already been in for 5, 10, 20 years in a space where you're just getting started out in. So don't be afraid to use Google and use YouTube and look for those best practices and look for those learnings and look for those posts that are like 10 things I wish I would have known when starting this or starting that. There's a lot of really good, powerful information out there. And if you can kind of use those as stepping stones to catapult yourself a little bit further at that starting point, then go for it. That's what it's there for. Number 6, being real with the fact that you are starting from the bottom. This can be a tough one. Because whenever we're starting something new, we are starting from the bottom. We're starting in this smaller space. Maybe you are, like, for example, maybe you're starting an online business and you've always done your business in person and you've, had a lot of clients and a lot of people that you saw in person, and now you want to start something online. And I can speak from experience. It doesn't grow overnight. You don't all of a sudden start offering, coaching online or, services and stuff online and automatically, boom, it just happens and these clients appear. It takes time. It takes time for those people to build trust and to move forward with you. And sometimes you get some new people and things like that. Or if you're starting a blog, it takes some time for people to come and be on your page and read your blog content. And then not only does it take time for them to read your content, but then to give you feedback on it and maybe, leave you comments. So it's always going to be the case that when you're starting something new, you have to come to terms with the fact and be real with the fact that you're starting from the bottom. And you have to be cool with that. And you have to be grounded and rooted down in your why and know that you're willing to do what it takes to be consistent, to know that, okay, yeah, I'm starting from the bottom, but I'm going to do what it takes to climb up that ladder and climb up those stairs and climb up that mountain to get to that goal, to get to that point where I say that I want to be. So be real with that, because it's not always easy. It can be a little bit scary, especially because the world is watching, maybe not the whole world, but your friends, your community, people around you. When you're starting something new, you're starting from the bottom. And when other people can see that, sometimes it's a little bit nerve-wracking and it can be a little bit uncomfortable. But if hey, this is what I want to do and it feels right in my heart and in my soul and in my bones, then it doesn't matter what anyone else says. It doesn't matter if you're starting from the bottom, because you're starting something that feels good for you and that sits right with your soul. And that's really, really powerful and really important. Point number 7 when starting something new: understand that it won't get easier, but you will get better at finding a way and believing in your capabilities. So it's not the case that all of a sudden things get super easy. In fact, when you continue to grow and grow and grow in whatever it is that you have started, there's going to be bigger challenges and there's going to be things that you're like, oh, I could have never seen that coming. Or just when I thought I was, on a roll, this happened, And it's not that things get easier. It's just that you get more more comfortable being uncomfortable, being in those tough situations. You get better at finding a way and saying, hey, 2 months ago when this came out of nowhere, I learned from that. And I learned, hey, you know what? With a little blood, sweat, and tears and oomph and purpose and just going after what I said I was going to do and finding a way, I got past that. And now when this next, hardship comes or this unexpected situation comes or this learning comes, I know that I've gotten over tough things in the past. I can do hard things, including this, even if I didn't expect it, or even if it was something that I couldn't have prevented, for example. So it's not going to get easier. I can speak to you from experience. It doesn't get easier, but you will get better at finding a way and believing in your capabilities. For sure. So when I started this podcast, I recorded most of the episodes in my boyfriend's studio, which is awesome. And I have access to that whenever I want. But it's also his studio where he works. And then at the same time, I also wanted at my apartment to have a setup there, because I thought, okay, if during the week when I'm not really with him too much, if I want to record some podcast episodes or I want to create some content for you guys, I want to have a setup to be able to do that too. Well, I ordered the microphone, I got all the systems, and now I realize, wow, this is not easy. It's not as easy as he makes it look. And I need to figure out, how that audio works well or how the audio works well. And I need to learn this new program so that I can do it on my own. And so it's not that it gets easier, but because, I've done things in the past where I've overcome obstacles and hardships and things like that, I know I can find a way. I know it's not going to be easy. And I know I'm probably going to have to mess up the audio a few times and re-record some things a few times in order to get good at it. But I believe in my capabilities and I believe that I can find a way. So it's not going to get easier and it's not going to be a walk in the park. It's not going to be a piece of cake. But if you believe in your capabilities and you believe in your why and your mission and you're willing to do what it takes, then you will get there. You will get there. And the last point that I want to talk to you about was actually something that was said to me by my friend Trisha. And I was talking to her just kind of, I think it was over text and we were just messaging back and forth. And I was just talking to her about, how it was a little bit challenging for me starting this new podcast. And I was, like I told you guys in previous episodes, I was kind of like, do I sound weird? Does this sound weird? Did I do this good? Is the music, like all these things? And I was just like, I feel like, these perfectionist tendencies are like, they're coming and it's been really challenging. And one of the things that she said was, she's like, hey, Lunden, there's a difference in trying to be perfect and actually wanting to serve with excellence. And it seems like you're wanting to serve with excellence. And I was like, yes, you put words to what I was feeling 100%. And you have to get, real with that when starting something new, is that you can't always have everything be absolutely perfect to get started. Everything doesn't need to be absolutely perfect for you to put it out there, and there's a difference in wanting to be perfect or needing to be perfect and needing everything to be great, because, oh my gosh, what if someone sees and they realize that I said 10 times and they realize that I messed up my words or something like that. And there's a difference between that and then wanting to serve with excellence and wanting things to be good because you want to put good stuff out there and wanting things to be great because you want to put great stuff out there. So just know that when starting something new, it's not easy. It's not easy, but if you want it bad enough, it will be worth it. Thank you so much for listening to this episode of Self-Love and Sweat, the podcast. Hey, do me a favor. Wherever you're listening to this podcast, give us a review. This really helps a lot. And share this with a friend. I'm only one person, and with your help, we can really spread the message of self-love and sweat and change more lives all around the world. I'm Lunden Souza, reminding you that you deserve a life full of passion, presence, and purpose, fueled by self-love and sweat. This podcast is a Hit Spot Austria production.